Okay, 5 ways to do something, but no way to do anything. All right. If you notice on Google Plus, I posted how to refine oil. Oil is not defined by color in the sense of color. I mean, you can thin it down and make it like Castrol. Castrol really did. They probably got all this black gunk they can't understand. All that black gunk you're going to do is you're going to take that and sit it out in a wooden box and let it harden. That's called chop. What you got when you got chop is you got everything you're looking for that needs to go in oil. So that big block of nasty, which might look like tar if you add molasses, um, molasses and gumbo is what tar is. But anyway, not gumbo spaghetti either. Is how you make gumbo, and that's the crap they lay on the road that gets all over your car and you get pissed about. Anyway, all you want to do is when you're using that kind of stuff, you're just tainting right now the color of it, which it should be like a, I don't know, foggy black. If they're, but it's got to turn black no matter what. But what you want to do is after you refine the oil, is you add a little bit of that to the regular clear oil, which could be anywhere from soy to vegetable to any of those things, to thicken it up a little bit. You're not looking at cups of this stuff. The only time you look at cups is when you're doing 20,000 gallons of it. And that's when you look at a cup. All you're doing is you're bringing a little bit of the color into it. It has some benefits to the oil as being not able to pass the oil rings. And that's about the only benefit. It coats nicely, etc., etc. If you're having problems with refined oil, do yourself a favor. Take I don't want to say a baby teaspoon, but that's what I use. And all you do is you add it to the oil. And it's normally just one baby not tablespoon, one baby spoon of alcohol. Now, a lot of people would be like, oh, why would you add alcohol? Well, simply take your engine oil, add just a tiny little, I mean, for the, what, 6 quarts you're adding, you're only going to add like a tenth of multi-purpose grease. You heat that up a little bit, then you add just about I think it's about a tenth or a 1/50th of alcohol to it, and you'll see why mechanics in Europe used to complain about every time I do this to an engine. They're like, oh my God, you screwed the engine. No, I thickened the oil up so that when it goes up, it doesn't rely on the pump all the time for the oil to come back down. Now, grant the oil rings will bring the oil back down. It'll get stuck sometimes in the fact of right where the piston comes down on the head of the piston. They like to call it head of a piston. I call the top end piston, not the piston rod. It comes down and cleans it, and it'll get stuck. And that's where the mechanic, you just take all that of the excess with a putty knife, preferably a rubber one. You scrape that off and put it in the can, and you do yourself a favor. You make this ridiculous looking thing I've made, which is technically, and don't go running out to your mom's 10-quart spaghetti pan, but it's a tank of sorts. But you can homemade make small ones. And that's where you get into the 10 to 20 to 15, 16 quart spaghetti or pressure cookers, as I think there are, beyond 8 quarts to 9 quarts and whatnot. And you just drill a hole. You have a guy weld a adapter to it so you can thread a metal line on. In between that metal line, you put a filter. After that, you run it to where you want to go. It has to be 15 feet up above your head, or at least 12 feet. A 12-foot high ceiling would work nicely. And all you do is you put a piece of metal around it so you can actually use gas, and you flame it a little bit. Now, some people are like, how do you know what the temperature is? Well, simply you have another hole put in that tells you what the fluid temperature is and whatnot. So when that fluid temperature is 110 degrees or 80 degrees to 100 degrees, you don't have to heat it up a lot. You just want to heat it up to the point that it's not boiling. And then you let it run down through the filter. It can be your used old car engine oil, which a lot of people do that. They'll add about 4 quarts of new, and then they'll strain it down and bring it down into a basin that is probably about 22 quarts, and then they'll pump it out of that basin and put it in something metal so they can put it in their vehicle. There's only been a few people that have actually made these, and to the date, the mechanics, they don't take them to mechanics. The cars are running nice, they don't smoke, it runs rather healthy, and if you want to say healthy for something that is combusting all the time and whatnot. Now, the one thing mechanics tend to forget is when you do an inspection, one thing of an inspection on a vehicle is to take the valve covers off. Take your little brush, take your oil you just made with multi-purpose grease, you dip down in it, and you just coat the crap out of your valve springs to a certain point. Put the valve cover back on, tighten it down by specs, normally 12-inch pounds to 16-inch pounds, and you're done. That's actually one part of the inspection they tend to forget. To go around, lube up all your, they like to say these little, they're actually called peacocks, but they're not really a peacock, where you just put the multi-purpose grease and lube the joints in the vehicle. When they do that, that's the second part of the inspection for a vehicle. Third is the exhaust, and you have to have a machine to do this, and looking at the machine they use, that's a computer. It's funny because it's not exactly correct. So when it's not exactly correct, it becomes a problem. How much engine oil do you need to use with multi-purpose grease? The first quart is normally what's required. The next 5 quarts you can just do off the shelf and pour it in. The only reason this I recommend it this way and not the other way is that you can either do it one or two ways. You can do it by just scraping a brush off the top of the multi-purpose grease and going at it and while you're doing your oil change and whatnot, but where you thin it out so that you actually get the viscosity, because technically multi-purpose grease in Europe runs about $1,000 just to get a little tube. $1,000 in euro. And the reason for it is it's one of the things that oil manufacturers tend to use to make oil, and they don't have to use a lot of it. Chop often looks like hardened black clay, which is not clay. So anyway, to make this thing, if you've seen it on Google Plus, I'll tell you how to technically set it up. You can use 2 torches to heat it up, but I actually just recommend using something of a grill of sorts, like a burner off a grill. Pop the little center metal piece off or drill down through it, put it on there and just kind of heat it up. Something that won't get you in trouble. And make a few, I probably, if I was a mechanic, which I have been in the past, been a mechanic, I'd make about 4 quarts of it, give or take how many engines I may want to service. If I have 3 cars, then I'm only going to service 3 cars, and I only need about 3 quarts to 2 quarts. You don't need a lot, because it's going to be sitting around, it's going to harden, you're going to have to soften it every now and then, unless you put it in a container. Some people get pissed when they make this black chop, which is hardened oil that sat around too long, the oil went out of it. Sell it back to whatever manufacturer or oil company, they'll buy it from you, because about a pound of chop is worth about $20. But for them, it's going to make about a few $1,000s. So if you got this black chop, don't be afraid to send it in and or call them, then send it in and say, hey, will you buy this for 20? Most people, when you get about a pound of black chop, we'll take it out and bury it, which is stupid. When it rains, it'll break up, and then you wonder why your freshwater well just got contaminated. Antifreeze is the same way. Antifreeze after a period of time will thicken if you let it sit and become concentrate. You don't use black chop on antifreeze, moron. But the other thing of it is, you can actually sell this back to the company if there is no recycling. Most of the time you can take it to a mechanic. The mechanic will barrel it because he legally has to barrel it and send it back to the antifreeze company. You don't send it downstream in the river. A lot of that green algae is not green algae, it's antifreeze. So any river you look at, from Mississippi to Susquehanna to New York's lake, and the other rivers going all the way out west to California, you see a lot of green algae. Now, algae will actually become part of that if you dump antifreeze in the water. The algae will go after it because it will kill off the algae, or kill off the fish, which the algae does protect the fish in certain ways. So yeah, all that green moss you're treading around on is normally antifreeze. Quite a few companies in the past in North America got busted. Over 9 of them got busted for repeatedly dumping antifreeze in the river. It's not good to consume. Could be why you're lightheaded, you don't feel good, you throw up. It's not necessarily food poisoning that you're going after. It's the fact that the antifreeze is getting into drinking water.